Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Madeline Milka, APEC's President and CEO. Welcome to the APEC's Legislative Leadership Series, our second panel of the week. Today, we're having a very timely and critical discussion about voting rights and challenges in the 2020 election. We're 54 days away from Election Day, so it's the perfect time to learn more about this topic. Before the panel begins, I am proud to introduce Daphne Kwok from AARP for opening remarks. Daphne is the Vice President of Multicultural Leadership for the Asian American and Pacific Islander Audience Strategy, where her work empowers AAPIs to choose how they live as they age. Daphne has long been a leader in the AAPI community, having been appointed by President Obama in 2010 to chair his advisory commission on AAPIs. Prior to her work at AARP, she spent many years leading organizations such as Asians and Pacific Islanders with Disabilities of California, Angel Island Immigration Station Foundation, and OCA Asian Pacific American Advocates, which was then known as the Organization of Chinese Americans, and even APEX. Daphne brings to AARP her experience as a leader of leaders through her community service in promoting and empowering the AAPI community. We are proud to have her joining us this afternoon for opening remarks. Please help me welcome Daphne Kwok.
Thank you so much, Madeline, and thank you all at APEX for once again hosting these tremendous sessions. I've been on a number of them over these last several months, and it's always so great to hear the tremendous issues and leaders that you all have. And so I'm so pleased to be able to be here to represent AARP and to be able to share with you a little bit about why this November 3rd elections is so important and how AARP is helping as well too. And I want to start off by just throwing out a few stats as we put this all into context. The first one, as you heard Madeline say, that we're 54 days away from the elections, and so that's not much time. And as we all know too, every one of AAPIs who are eligible to vote are all very, very important. But for us at AARP, it's those that are 50 years old and older and their families that we are very much focused on. So I just want to throw out there, do you know how many AAPIs there are who are over the age of 50? I'll tell you, it's about 4.3 million AAPIs, and that's a little bit over 13.2% of our overall AAPI population. And in the next 40 years, AAPIs over the age of 50 will be over 13 million individuals. That's a sizable number. And here on the screen, and we just want to show you that as AAPIs age, their voter participation rate increases. So it's a block that we constantly have to remember about and help and assist be able to vote. And especially this year, as there have been so many changes in the ways that we can vote this year. So I want to let you know what is AARP doing for this election cycle, and I want to let you know that AARP's Protect Voters 50 Plus campaign is a comprehensive voter engagement campaign to support and protect Americans 50 plus as they vote in this election. The campaign will help Americans vote safely. We want to really stress the word safely there, whether at home or in person. And the Protect Voters 50 Plus campaign will provide people with the information they need about this year's elections, including video voter guides, issue briefings, direct mail, text messaging, social media, and paid media. And just to let you know that several of these voter guides will be translated into Chinese, Vietnamese, and Korean for some of the battleground states. All this information you can find at aarp.org/election2020, and I will put that in the chat box after my comments. I encourage you to go to that site because on there's a map of the US, and you can go to your state and pull up these voter guides as well as other specific information for your specific area. And today we just released a poll on battleground states, how people 50 plus are going to vote and who they support in the presidential race, as well as key Senate races for those battleground states. I'll put all that information in the chat box as well. What are we doing for the AAPI audience? Well, we're providing in-language information in Korean and Vietnamese for some of these battleground states, Chinese, and we're putting the Chinese information especially on our chinese.aarp.org website. We're going to have an influencer strategy. We have 6 influencers lined up to be able to tie the intergenerational age group with their elders to help with the messaging. We're very excited that we're about to announce also a partnership with Ranch 99. So if you're in one of the fortunate 4 states that we'll be in, you'll also be able to get our messaging through Ranch 99. And also if you're in Miami, Atlanta, or Philadelphia, watch out for our billboards that will be in language as well. So we hope that you'll be able to take our information, use it for yourself, for your family, for your loved ones, for your elders, and be able to help them all participate and vote safely in this election cycle. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Daphne, for your remarks and for taking the time to join us today. We appreciate all the work that AARP is doing in this space. I also want to give a special thank you to our panel sponsors, Planned Parenthood and SEIU. We appreciate your support of this discussion and of APEX. Without further ado, I will now introduce the moderator of today's panel, Terry Au-Minnis. Terry is the Senior Director of the Census and Voting Programs for Asian Americans Advancing Justice, AAJC. She is a widely respected authority on voting rights and was one of the key leaders in the campaigns to reauthorize the Voting Rights Act in 2006, as well as to address the Supreme Court's decision in Shelby County versus Holder. Terry has published several articles, chapters in all 4 editions of the ABA's Elections Handbook, and has been counsel on numerous amicus briefs filed before the Supreme Court on voting rights cases, including Shelby County versus Holder. We are so thrilled she could join us to moderate this conversation today. As a reminder, for those joining us on Facebook, please put your questions in the comments section. And if you're joining the webinar, please use the Q&A chat box feature. Terry, I turn it over to you.
Great, thank you so much, Madeline, and thank you to APEX for inviting me to moderate this fantastic panel. I will invite my fellow panelists to come on camera now as I quickly introduce them before jumping directly into the exciting conversation we have planned for today. I am joined by Christine Chen, the Executive Director of API Vote, by Julianne Hines, the Vice President of Community and Government Engagement at Planned Parenthood Pasadena and San Gabriel Valley, Jigme Ugin, the Executive Vice President from SEIU Healthcare Minnesota, and Jerry Vadamala, the Director of the Democracy Program at Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. As noted, we will have a lively discussion and then turn this over to a Q&A session where you all can ask the burning questions you have of our fantastic panelists. So I'm going to start with you, Jigme, with respect to asking you if you can talk about some of the challenges and barriers to voting that you've been seeing from SEIU's perspective.
Thank you, Terry. Good afternoon, everyone. Jigme, also representing the SEIU API caucus, the second vice president. And I want to actually start by thanking and applauding all the teachers who are back in school and all the frontline workers and the postal service workers. These are folks that we call heroes, but we never treat them as one. And I actually wanted to pause for a second to highlight the amazing and the hardworking folks at the U.S. Postal Service who are vital for our everyday communities, not just for elections, you know, serving rural areas, the underserved communities by providing medication, paychecks, social security checks. And 45 now repeatedly claims that mail-in voting will lead to voter fraud without any evidence, and refusing any financial aid during this pandemic and leading up to the election. So everyone watching, I'd really call on you to call your congressional representatives and senators to support the postal workers. That being said, in SEIU, we are really looking at how we lift API voices. Now, for example, SEIU pays a lot of money for polls that come in, and SEIU has taken a stance that we will not work with any pollster that do not reflect API votes or API, any kind of sampling from the API community. That is huge for a union or any organization to take a stance. And the same goes with the member political organizers within our membership and having a proper plan to lift up API members within the union. Now, as we dive further into the election, a lot of states and especially the key battleground states at this point are scrambling to sign up poll workers. And you have celebrities like LeBron James and everyone finding creative ways to recruit more poll workers. What happens is smaller number of polling booths or location means longer lines in the ones that are open. So on April 7th, I remember that because it's my birthday, in my neighboring state of Wisconsin, in Milwaukee, that city was forced to reduce the number of polling sites from 180 to 5, right? Because they had such a huge staffing shortage. It was so bad that the governor eventually had to mobilize 700 National Guard in all these 40 counties in Wisconsin. So that's one case. And the other case is where in a lot of states, counting of absentee ballots won't begin until election day. So without proper workers, the results of these elections could take weeks to tabulate. So I would again request anyone out there to sign up to work as poll workers or like poll monitors. And I'm going to talk a little bit more on that later on, because signing up and taking action on democracy is another form of protest, right? This whole process of voting can be extremely complicated and intimidating, especially for new voters and limited English within our own community, right? Majority of these polling locations do not provide language because, again, that's another form of voter suppression and racial discrimination. This country's voter suppression is rooted on discrimination based on class and race. It impacts immigrants, Native Americans, indigenous people, Blacks, APIs, and it's such a huge tactic that is happening all across this country. Different forms of purging, blocking, and disenfranchisement of votes. In my home state of Minnesota, when it comes to the Voting Rights Act, there is a section 208, which actually gives voters the right to bring someone of their choice to a voting booth so that they can get assistance. The law is for people who do not read or speak English, and for the visually impaired or anyone with disability to have assistance. In Minnesota, only one person can assist or translate for 3 voters at a booth. Only 3 people. That literally canceled most of our API families. We have big families, right? Or these and then changing polling locations. Imagine our parents and grandparents who have voted at the same location on their entire voting lives, now have to look for new places. In this current environment, when our elders and our community are fearing hate attacks, because this administration obviously keeps insisting and referring to the coronavirus as Chinese virus, right? There are so many reasons why API voters turnout are so low. And mostly because I can be honest here, because the country's leading political parties believe that we do not, as a community, vote in large numbers. Hence, they do not think the need to invest resources or time on us. When this happens, I actually would want to end with saying that please look at mail-in ballots. It's less stressful than showing up in polling places. And also, since rules vary from state to state, creating deadlines, registering, bringing photo IDs, voter IDs, all of these, mail-in ballots. And I'm going to, again, later on at some point, talk about how we can organize and mobilize our communities around that. And with that, Terry, I'll just step back a little bit. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Jerry, based on your work, what should folks know about these issues that Jigby has been talking about in terms of what their rights are at the polls, and what are some of the solutions we are seeing in various parts of the country?
So there's a lot going on in this election, more than usual. I'm sure everyone's aware. Yeah, the things that we really focus on every election, and some of you have volunteered with us in the past, so thank you for that. I hope you'll volunteer again with one of our organizations this fall. We see language access as a really big issue, right? Because so many people in our community are limited English proficient. Some ethnic groups have much higher rates of limited English proficiency than others. So there, right now we have 27 jurisdictions around the country that are covered for Asian language assistance. And that means that all the voting material that is in English, it must also be translated into the covered language. And that's Section 203 of the Voting Rights Act. You have to make a certain threshold of population to be covered under Section 203 with a bunch of other factors. So for the 27 counties, that's great. For those specific languages, one thing we've noticed with COVID-19, not all of those counties are providing their updates in the covered languages. They're not translating all of the updates. Some, at least one jurisdiction we know in Michigan, still does not, the jurisdiction does not have the absentee ballot application translated, right? So one thing we see is non-compliance with Section 203. They don't have the translated materials. In the most extreme examples, they may not have the right ballot. They might not have the ballot translated. They may have the ballot mistranslated, we've seen over the years. And they may not have access, as I mentioned, for things like absentee ballot applications. Or on the websites need to be translated also. They might have the tab to translate listed in English, right? So someone that's trying to use that that has trouble reading English, they don't even know how to access the translated materials. The other issues we've seen are what was mentioned, Jigme had mentioned about Section 208. Section 208 applies nationwide, so that applies across the entire country. You can bring anybody of your choice inside the voting booth if you need assistance in reading the ballot or translating the ballot. And yeah, the great thing about that is that there's no threshold population requirement. It applies to every poll site. One thing we're concerned about is with COVID-19 and social distancing, that some poll workers and elections officials may think that Section 208 can take a back seat and social distancing is going to take precedent. That's not true. The Section 208 is not optional. Every poll site across the country has to comply with it. And that's something we're going to be looking out for. And you have that right. And Jigme had mentioned Minnesota. The Federal Voting Rights Act, which applies nationwide, there's no restriction on how many people you can be assisted by. Minnesota has that requirement, but all the other jurisdictions that I'm aware of, there is no such requirement. You could assist as many people as you need to, as long as the person that's providing the assistance is not the voter's employer or union rep. Some other issues that come up, Asian American voters being required to show ID when other voters are not. Again, the ID requirements vary from state to state. What we're concerned about is when only a certain group, in our case, Asian Americans, are required to show ID. And in some cases, poll workers say, well, you look like you're not an American, prove you're an American to me. Prove your citizenship, which is very problematic. It's not required at the poll site on election day in most jurisdictions, and most people don't carry that documentation with them. So those are things we look at also. Absentee ballots, as was mentioned, it's going to be a big way for people to vote this year. One thing to keep in mind is that the requirements vary from state to state. So you want to know, okay, is there no excuse absentee ballot available in my state? Meaning you don't need a valid excuse, and they have usually enumerated things that would be considered a valid excuse, like medical illness, you'll be outside the county or things like that. Certain states still have that. For those states, the question is, okay, does COVID-19 count as a valid excuse? For certain states, we know it doesn't, like Texas. right? So you want to be aware of that beforehand. Other states where it's no excuse absentee ballot, great. You don't need a valid excuse, but then you want to know, okay, if I make a mistake on my absentee ballot, like overvoting or some other issue, is there a chance or an opportunity to cure that that violation or that problem with my ballot? And that again varies from state to state. So it's nice. I understand if you want to, you have a health issue and you want to vote by absentee ballot, just know there are some risks associated with that. And you need to know those risks. I think all of our organizations or most of our organizations will be coming out with some literature, if it's not out already, coming out very soon to inform all our voters on what those requirements are. One thing we see at the poll site when people vote on election day, so many of our voters, Asian American voters, have problems at the poll site, right? They overvote, they spoil the ballot, and at the poll site, somebody can help them, whether it's an interpreter or somebody they bring with them under Section 208. What happens when you're voting at home with an absentee ballot, right? If you make a mistake, again, some states you have an opportunity to cure, others you may not. Some states you may not even know if your ballot was rejected, right? So there is a risk associated with that. Lastly, I want to say, with voting, you have different options. There's voting on election day, there's absentee ballot, but there's also early voting. Early voting is a great thing. We just started that in New York last year. I always wished when I traveled to other jurisdictions, why isn't this available everywhere? Early voting is great. There's usually much, much less people there. It's usually for about 2 weeks before the election. That's a great opportunity for folks to vote in person. So if there is a problem, you'll know that your vote was actually counted. You can correct a problem if it occurs. And then there's also the opportunity for drop boxes in certain places where if you're scared about the mail, which unfortunately it's become an issue, you have the option to drop your ballot into a drop box somewhere. So, you have all those different options. Language assistance is always an issue. The worst thing that we've seen in the past is Asian American voters being segregated into separate voter lines, Asian American voter lines, and a line for everybody else. We haven't seen that since 2012. We're hoping not to see anything like that again. But the best way to protect against a lot of these things is to educate ourselves, sign up to be a poll worker, right? And if you're not going to do that, then please volunteer with one of our organizations on election day to protect our community.
Great. Thank you, Jerry. Yeah, another part of the discussion here is not just around the rights that we have, which we've discussed beforehand, but really also about getting our communities out to vote. And that really means paying attention to the issues that our community cares about. So I'm going to turn to you first, Christine, to talk about some of the issues important to AAPI voters.
Yeah, heading into 2020, I was really excited because I believe that Asian American Pacific Islanders are highly motivated to turn out. Everything from what we saw from them organizing around census, and then also even coming out of the 2018 elections. Young Asian American voters typically have the lowest turnout rate, but they tripled their participation during a midterm election, right? And also, our voters now understand even more so the significance of decisions being made by elected officials and how it's really tied to their livelihood. Especially since, a large majority of kids have gone back to school recently, virtually as a hybrid or in person, but then they are tuning in every day, listening to the decisions being made by elected officials on a daily basis, right? So with that increased engagement, I think our voters are going to head to cast their ballot with their most recent experiences with COVID-19, with the understanding that there's been an increase of anti-Asian violence and sentiments, and also in terms of a lens around racial equity issues, and especially since we've seen an increased involvement of our community in support of Black Lives Matters. Before the 2020 cycle, key issues had always been focusing on healthcare, jobs and economy, and education. Also, support for gun control was one that gained much support, 7-to-1 ratio. Most recently, the National Education Association did a poll in just battleground states of Asian American voters. That essentially equates to a quarter of the Asian American Pacific Islander electorate just residing in battleground states. And some of the themes that's resonating among the voters that are top level issues that concern them is, once again, healthcare, COVID-19, jobs and economy, and there are heightened concerns around racial equity, like fairness, racial discrimination, on a wide variety of different issues. Also, 4 in 5 Asian American Pacific Islander English-speaking online voters who took the NEA survey rate themselves as highly motivated. Biden voters are slightly more enthusiastic, but and 2/3 of those same voters did not vote in 2016, but they plan to vote in 2020. 51% of English-speaking online voters also indicated that they were comfortable voting in person, and significantly higher comfort with voting by mail options of 80%. But the difference is non-English speaking Asian voters that took the survey. There's only 46% that feel comfortable voting by mail. So that indicates to us that we need to do a lot more education and engagement among those who are non-English speaking in our communities. Next week, the 2020 Asian American Voter Survey conducted by API Vote, API Data, Asian American Advancing Justice AJC, and AARP will be revealed. But early results also show that 32% say that they are independent, don't know or do not identify with any political party. So in terms of their support, whether it's presidential or down the ticket, is really going to depend. And then also, other thing I want to note is that 56% of registered Asian American voters said that they had not been contacted at all by the Democratic Party, and 59% were not contacted by the Republicans.
Great, thanks, Christine. Julianne, I want to turn to you now, since clearly Planned Parenthood has some issues of focus, and would love to learn more about sort of how you all have worked within the API community with respect to the issues that you all care about and work on, and how you've been able to use that to engage people.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm going to start with just a little context. We know AAPIs are the fastest growing racial group in the United States, and over the next 4 decades will come to represent 1 in 10 people living in this country. And I want to particularly elevate that AAPI women hold significant but untapped voting power. The population of AAPI voters is expected to double from 5.9 million in 2015 to 12.2 million in 2040. And in fact, in many local areas, like in the San Gabriel Valley where I live and work, the percentage is much higher. According to a 2018 report by Asian Americans Advancing Justice Los Angeles, the San Gabriel Valley alone is home to more Asian Americans than in the city of Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, and the Asian American populations in 42 different states. APIs are also the fastest growing immigrant population and already make up a large number of immigrant voters. A poll among naturalized citizens who voted in 2016 showed Asian Pacific Islanders make up 31%, which was just under Latinos at 34%. In a poll conducted by Intersections of Our Lives, which is a collaboration of 3 reproductive justice organizations, the National Latina Institute for Reproductive Justice, In Our Own Voice, National Black Women's Reproductive Justice Agenda, and the National Asian Pacific American Women's Forum. In the aftermath of the 2018 midterms, we learned that AAPI women are deeply concerned about the political status quo and highly motivated to bring about change through voting. 86% of AAPI women voters believed that the stakes were too high not to vote, and 74% agreed that political candidates often fail to acknowledge what matters most to them. 73% of AAPI women voters expressed serious concerns about the way things are going in the country. The current administration has continued to promote xenophobic and anti-Asian sentiment, especially during COVID-19, and with references to the viruses, the China flu and things like that. And all of this is happening at the same time that AAPIs are experiencing disproportionate death from COVID-19, including here in California. and new exclusionary policies implemented by the administration, such as the ban on most new green cards, that are landing very heavily on AAPI communities. 85% of AAPI women want representation that looks like them and values what they value. This year, a woman of South Asian descent is on the presidential ballot for the first time in US history. Investing in AAPI voters and AAPI women voters is critical. AAPI public opinion data breaks the stereotypes of AAPIs only being interested in immigration and education, and shows that progressive issues like gun control, climate change policy, and larger governments are also issues that AAPIs care about. This includes reproductive health care. 80% of AAPI women voters supported candidates who respect their autonomy over their reproductive health. And 93% said that a woman being able to control if, when, and how she has children provides benefits to both individuals and society. In fact, AAPI women have shown to be the most supportive of abortion legality among other racial and ethnic groups. When it comes to issues that matter for AAPI women, reproductive health care is on this list. It's not an issue we need to shy away from. And I'll just conclude by sharing that the top 4 issues that AAPI women voters said were important for Congress to address and make progress on were ensuring access to clean water, ending racial, ethnic, and cultural discrimination, ensuring everyone has access to affordable health care, and passing common sense gun laws. So I highly encourage you to check out the report, Mighty Voices, Asian American and Pacific Islander Women Voices in 2020, which was done by the National Association of Pacific American Women's Forum.
Great, thank you. You all have shared a wealth of information. And I think this takes me to sort of this next set of questions, which is what can everybody do who's watching and who may be watching in the future for the recording? What can they do to get involved in this important election cycle? Christine, I'll start with you.
So, you know, we've been talking about the growth of the community, but if they're not even registered, then, you know, they cannot go vote. So right now, before many of the voter registration deadlines come up at the end of September, beginning of October, we're encouraging all organizations and individuals to participate for National Voter Registration Day. That's September 22nd. It's going to be an opportunity where we're leading up a wide variety of different voter registration activities and really highlighting the issue of the importance of that. But, you know, it really stems back to each and every one of you. The data shows that only 56% of Asian Americans registered in the 2016 elections. So you might as well assume that half of your family and friends are not registered. So we need you to go and focus on that for September. Also, today is Request Your Ballot Day. For those who are registered, have the conversations with your friends and family and raise awareness that you can go ahead and apply for a ballot and to vote by mail currently, depending on your state. But this is the opportunity like today to really hone in on that particular issue in itself. And then along with that, I believe Jerry had mentioned also the poll workers. AAPI Vote was also part of Power to the Polls, where we're trying to recruit with other organizations over 250,000 poll workers, not only to vote, not only to work on election day, but to also work during the early voting time periods. And then, you know, with Advancing Justice AJC and AAPI Vote, we also staff our AAPI Vote hotline, where we provide bilingual assistance in English, Mandarin, Cantonese, Korean, Vietnamese, Tagalog, Urdu, Hindi, and Bengali. And so we need your help, not only to help staff the hotline, but to also get the word out so that if those who are limited English proficient, they could go ahead and get the assistance that they need. And in addition, we are part of a larger poll monitoring system where whether it's volunteering with ALDEF or volunteering with the larger 866R Vote infrastructure, there's a role for each and every one of you.
Great, thanks, Christine. Julianne, how is Planned Parenthood working to mobilize AAPI voters this election cycle?
Thanks. Yeah. Planned Parenthood's been investing in voter engagement work within the AAPI community and addressing AAPI women voters' unique barriers. Starting last year, we funded a local poll to really learn more about AAPI attitudes and values in the communities in and around our health centers. Our learnings were pretty similar to a lot of the reports that have been referenced today, in that AAPI voters in our communities have highly favorable attitudes about services, a wide variety of services, and particularly those provided by Planned Parenthood. In fact, the more that they learn about the services provided, the higher their favorability scores increase, particularly among voters who took the poll in Chinese languages. From these learnings, we've taken new steps to engage the community. We've invested in hiring staff that represent these communities, all the communities that we serve across our affiliate and particularly in our health centers. While all of our health centers have video translation available in over 100 languages, it was critical for us to employ Mandarin and Cantonese speaking staff in our Alhambra Health Center, where 23% of our patients are AAPI. We've expanded the materials we're providing in multiple languages. We're investing in AAPI youth leaders throughout our service area, both through our own youth programs and by providing resources and training through local partners like CAUSE and API's Mobilize. Moving into the election cycle, we're taking a number of actions as an affiliate and as a national federation to engage and educate AAPI voters in this election. As an affiliate, we'll be using our health centers as places for patients to learn about voting and how to get registered. And we're engaged with our local communities through voter education phone banks into our service area. Throughout the entire state of California, we're working with our statewide office and all 7 California affiliates on additional voter education campaigns, particularly targeting the San Joaquin Valley and the Inland Empire, both areas where AAPI communities are struggling economically at this moment in time, and who may need additional assistance in understanding how to navigate registration and the voting process this year. Our national team is also working with both Latinx organizations like ECIS Labs and experts like Dr. Janelle Wong to combat disinformation about the election on platforms like WhatsApp and in other spaces. And for the first time ever, we have an IE program specifically focused on organizing and getting out AAPI voters in 2 target states, in Pennsylvania and North Carolina. From our supporter engagement data, we've seen that most of our AAPI supporters were being brought in from our other programs like our Raíz Latinx organizing team, our youth organizing, and our patient advocacy organizing. Recognizing the need for a program specifically devoted to this work, 2020 is the first year our national team has a program and budget to do AAPI voter engagement at this level. There's one last thing that I want to reiterate that Jigme mentioned earlier. Attacks on the Postal Service present a grave threat to our democracy while obstructing access to healthcare and prescriptions like birth control, including for the AAPI community. We need the Senate to take up the Delivering for America Act passed by the House, which would stop any operational changes from being made this year to impede Postal Service, and which includes $25 billion in additional USPS funding. In addition, the Senate must provide at least $3.6 billion to states for necessary voting reforms to meet this moment, as the House did in the HEROES Act. This money will support extended early in-person voting periods, expanded voter registration options, voter education, expanding vote by mail, adding secure drop-off locations for ballots, and ensuring safe and secure in-person voting. We all have to keep pushing the Senate on both of these pieces of legislation to ensure a safe and secure election.
Great, thanks. Jerry, I will turn to you next for thoughts that you have with respect to what people who are watching right now can do to help out this election cycle.
Yeah, so I would say you want to sign up to be a poll worker. If you're not going to be doing, first of all, you have to take the day off. Okay, that's not even an option. You have to take the day off and decide what you're going to do. You know, being a poll worker is great. With ALDEF, we have our program. Many of you know it. We're going to be in hopefully 14 states in Washington, D.C., as we usually are. Things are going to be different because of COVID. Our volunteers are going to be wearing PPE. We're going to try our best to still conduct some type of survey, but part of our program is real-time voter protection. So we're there to protect our voters, all voters. We're focusing on Asian American voters. And we're going to be looking out for things like anti-Asian discrimination, voter harassment or intimidation, violations of the Voting Rights Act, whether it be under Section 203 or Section 208. One thing I did mention earlier with voting with voters' rights was that the naming issues that so many people in our community have when they go to the voter roll on election day at the poll site, their name, for whatever reason, it may be inverted. There may be a spelling mistake or a space or a hyphen is off. When that happens, the poll worker has the discretion to determine whether the names substantially conform enough to say, okay, this is the person. We've seen so many times a poll worker says, oh, it's not you. It's not exactly matching whatever the ID is or whatever you said it was. Sorry, you can't vote. Right. Under the Help America Vote Act, HAVA, poll workers have to give you a provisional ballot. In some states you call it an affidavit ballot. And that's one thing to keep in mind. If you, for whatever reason, know that you're registered at that poll site and your name is not there or it's incorrectly spelled or whatever, you should not leave that poll site without voting. They have to give you, you demand a provisional ballot or an affidavit ballot. And that happens time and again with our community. One thing that's really great is some jurisdictions have electronic poll books now where it autofills. That has helped tremendously, but I know so many places still don't have that. That's one thing you want to advocate for is those electronic poll books. But you want to keep an eye out for that. So our program, we allow you to be there in real time on election day, protecting voters. We also have poll monitoring available where people would work in a team of two. It may be just one this time because of COVID, traveling to anywhere from 3 to 6 different poll sites on election day with a checklist. And we do the training for you. We'll train you in October on what to look for. You're inside the poll site and you're observing the process for all voters. We're focusing on Asian American voters. And if there is a problem, we're trying to put a stop to it and remedy it in real time on election day, because if you lose your right to vote on election day, many times that means it's lost forever. So please volunteer with us, with ALDEF, if you're not going to do that. And the minimum commitment for us is 3 hours on election day. You can do that for part of the day. You could be working for a campaign if you want for the rest of the day. Christine had mentioned API vote and the 866-hour vote and all the different language assistance that's offered that way. So please sign up with one of our groups, do the work on election day, decide maybe you want to be a poll worker. But the immediate homework, check if you're registered to vote right now. Check with all your family members. If not, register today. If you want to put it off, do it on National Registration Day. We can't afford to sit this one out.
Great, thanks, Jerry. And Jigme, what would you advise to our friends that are watching about how they can get engaged in what you all, in fact, are doing to help engage the community?
Thank you, Terry, and thank you to all the panelists. I think I want to start with the postal workers again, the importance of the postal workers and how this administration is doing everything to discredit and shut them down, because they will make a difference. Postal workers, the mail ballots will make a difference in this election. So besides writing to your elected leaders, you can also go and buy stamps. And the postal workers actually have beautiful merchandise these days. My daughter has a what do you call it, a crop top, postal workers crop top. It's sold out right now, but there are t-shirts, hats, and you can even get lawn signs. Support them, we need them, right? And especially when it comes to ballot rejection, just so you get a sense, in this primary elections, right, just earlier this year, across 23 states, 500,000 ballots were rejected. I know Jerry talked a little bit about it. 500,000. It's incredibly insane. I mean, if you remember in 2016, the current occupant of the White House won Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin by roughly 80,000 votes. The impact it has is unrepairable. right? That's one of the reasons why we need to do education on voting rights, language assistance, you know, sign up to volunteer to phone bank within your state. If your state doesn't require it, parachute yourself in some other state. Our communities have felt and been invisible way too long. We've been discounted. And this is our moment to really go out there and reach and talk to our community and turn them out to vote. And I know all the panelists talked about the poll workers and poll monitors. These are necessary. Please volunteer with Terry's Asian American Advancing Justice, or Christine's API Votes, Jerry's ALDA, you know, or with Planned Parenthood with Julian. These are all organizations, and there are other local organizations who are putting in extra effort so that our votes are counted. Our votes, right? API votes. And for Indigenous, Black, Latinx, API, and immigrant votes, they are like what Stacey Abrams says, it's a three-part process. You protest in the street, you protest at the polls, and then protest through participation, right? Making your votes count. So please be out there. This election, I mean, we cannot even talk about and emphasize how important it is, but it will, API's votes will make a difference, and we will be able to make the difference when we start tapping in, channelizing, igniting, and pushing this. And as far as SCIU is concerned, we are doing our reach out to all our membership. We are doing language justice, language assistance to our members, and making sure them and their families are registered, going out and voting. Our members are calling in various states. We are out there, and we hope everyone who's watching, you take time to volunteer from now to election day, and on election day. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Now we can turn to the questions, and we have several that have been populated through the question and answer. So I do invite folks who are watching to either provide their questions through the question and answer feature if they are watching this through Zoom, and on Facebook, of course, please use the comment section there, and we will grab the questions from there too. And I'm going to start with one that Jerry, I believe you answered in the box with respect to whether there's a prioritized list of states or jurisdictions that we should be focusing on in terms of being problematic with respect to encouraging access for APIs or LEP voters. So I know you provided a response in that box, but for our friends on Facebook, perhaps if you could repeat some of those, and then I will ask others to chime in with places that they think are problematic and or places that they are targeting for whatever reasons they're targeting them.
Yeah, so I think I had mentioned in that Hamtramck, Michigan, we know there's been issues with Bengali. The DOJ actually sued Hamtramck years ago for discrimination against Middle Eastern voters. Detroit, Michigan, there's always been issues with Bengali American voters. The last few elections, that's always been an issue. Malden, Massachusetts, we know there's been some issues with Chinese American voters. The entire state of Texas, we know it's going to be an issue. We're going to try our best to cover as many places as we can. Traditionally, in the last few years, I mean, we've been in Houston, Austin, and Dallas. But I know there's places like Sugar Land and other places, Euless, Texas, we heard of some problems. So it's really throughout the state. And I know the Texas Civil Rights Project is doing some good work down there also. Gwinnett County in Georgia, I know there's always issues at those poll sites. Fairfax County, Virginia, there's been some issues with Vietnamese American voters. In Annandale, Virginia, that's where in 2012 there was segregation. Poll workers decided to have a separate Asian line. New Orleans in Louisiana, we had some Section 208 issues several years ago. They also tried to stop us from being within the no electioneering zone. And part of the reason there it's a problem is just by the fact of us being at a certain place, many times that will stop some of the discrimination from happening. And of course, New York City, it has a reputation for being liberal, but there's been, you know, the people that work at these poll sites, and this is something that I think we need to say here, mean, the average age, I think, nationwide is like over 61 or something. It's usually, from my experience monitoring poll sites, older white residents. Sometimes they are upset about the changing neighborhood, all the Asians moving in. It's not always smooth. And many times the people that are working at the poll sites do not reflect the demographics of that poll site, of that neighborhood. That's why it's so important to be a poll worker. But those are just some of the issues, some of the jurisdictions off the top of my head that came to mind, but I'm sure there are more.
Okay, thanks. Others?
I would reiterate what Jerry had noted, especially for Texas and Georgia. It seems like a number of the southern states tend to have a number of barriers to voting and also creating a lot of confusion. We've already seen, especially like in Georgia in the most recent elections, how polling sites have such long lines. And that's why we're really trying to re-emphasize about educating, helping those that need the language assistance, help them apply for their ballot, make sure that they complete their ballot correctly and cleanly. We want to make sure they're not spoiled and they're completed in a correct way, so that way they are also accepted. And then, ultimately, we did go ahead and provide some links in the chat as well as on the Facebook chat in regards to where you can today sign up to be a poll worker. A lot of times these poll workers are not being trained. And so I think all of us are trying to reemphasize that each and every one of you, if you feel comfortable being a poll worker, like I said, it's not only just for election day. We also need poll workers for those working during the early vote season throughout October.
Great.
I can, Terry, yep, thank you. Jump in a little bit. For the union's perspective, we look at where we have deeper membership, and then look at what the battlegrounds look like. At this point, we're looking at Pennsylvania, Virginia, Minnesota, and Nevada, where the language needs are really urgent, right? Like in Pennsylvania, Vietnamese, Chinese, and Hindi speakers, or in Virginia, Hindi, Korean, Chinese, and Minnesota, Hmong, Vietnamese. Nevada is Tagalog, Vietnamese. So really identifying bilingual members to go and to call. But then this is within the union, but there's also a reach out that happens, and like Texas has been named often, but it's important, the need for Texas. And like, who would have thought that the state of Minnesota would be a battleground, right? But we are here today, and we can't afford to lose Minnesota. And if we lose Minnesota, that is like the last frontier in the Midwest, a complete disaster. So I talked about this earlier. If your state, you feel safe, you're in a blue state, and you really don't have any concerns, parachute yourself, adopt a state. Because of COVID, one of the advantages is also calling people, right? Doing texting, emailing, using your social media power, any and all, like, to a point people get sick of you. I say that this is about over information than no information. Our communities have dealt with it. Let it be over information, and let it be like, stop talking about the election, let's just eat dinner, right? To that point, we have to get there. We have to get our elders who are, there are so many situations about a rejection vote that people who've been first-time voters who went through an arduous process have been demoralized and don't want to go in again, right? There are so many vote rejections. People don't want to participate in it. So we have to keep pushing, keeping it exciting, fun, and most important, the risk. So please, again, sign up. I can see all the links down on the chat. Please sign up. Take a week for each organization, through election day. Please do that.
Thanks. Julianne, did you want to talk about some of the states that you all are targeting and focusing on?
Yeah, I think similar to what Jigme was mentioning, the opportunities that our national organization really saw were in Pennsylvania and North Carolina, for where our membership could really lean in and do that specific outreach to API communities. So we're just excited. This is the first time that we're doing it on this level, and so we're really excited to engage in this work.
Great. Next line of questions, I think, has to do with something that everyone did touch upon, and that is COVID-19 and the impact that is having on our election cycle. One question was just whether or not each organization has prepped materials in terms of COVID-19 guidelines for the various outreach, GOTV, National Voter Registration Day efforts, and either you prepped it yourself or if you can point people to places where they can get this information. And another question is actually for young voters who live with their grandparents and those of the elder population. They're asking, I guess, for some some tips about how they can continue to outreach and get people to register and vote while at the same time protecting their loved ones. I think Jimmy touched upon it a little bit, but I am interested to kind of hear sort of that's a balancing act that people have to do, and how do you take that into consideration when you're trying to be actively engaged but still protecting your loved ones at home?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. You know, as a healthcare provider, this is something of particular importance for Planned Parenthood. And really one of the big reasons why we made the decision to say we're really going to use our health centers, because our health centers are already have all of the protocols. They are being incredibly safe in how they're continuing to see patients. And so that's just like the #1 spot. And when we really look at a lot of you know, for instance, the Sacramento Bee came out today with an article that talked about vote by mail as really having overall raised turnout, but for certain communities like the AAPI community, for the Latino community, for younger people, for renters, these are all people who are patients of Planned Parenthood. For those communities, it's actually the turnout was lowered in the last vote by mail election. So we know that we have to really be doing extra work to reach out to those specific populations and really help them to walk through that process, to understand the vote by mail process, and to feel like they can really confidently engage. So that's one of the ways we're doing it. And then quite frankly, because we're a healthcare provider and keeping people healthy and safe is of primary concern to us, we're really largely doing all of our voter engagement work online and through phone banks, through text banks, through digital campaigns. That's really where we're not going out door to door. We're really keeping everybody sort of in their homes, online, reaching them where they are, to balance that fine line of outreach and keeping people healthy.
Yeah, I would say that so AAPI Vote, we have partners in 28 states, and a lot of these organizations were also doing work to get out the count for the 2020 census. So it really has been pivoting everything to the online, and we know our communities are everywhere in different places, on WeChat, on WhatsApp. So it's not just about Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, right? So we need to go where the communities are at, speak to them in their languages, in their circles, right? So it really, that's why we need as many volunteers who have access to these different communities. There's so much that we could provide. We can provide you the tools and even translate materials, but we really need all of you to be able to take that and get that into those spaces in itself. So with that, I want to also note, and I'll provide this also in the chat, is that AAPI Vote, we recently just launched our relational organizing app that we're using, Outreach Circle. And we've been approached by a lot of organizations and individuals saying, hey, I've never done this work. I'm really interested in getting involved in the next 8 weeks. How do I do this? Well, if you join the app, we will give you action items that you can do with your own family and friends every single week. And so leading up to the election. So that way you don't have to be the expert in terms of what phase am I in, what do I need to highlight. We will provide that for you, but we need each and every one of you to go ahead and take that information, have those conversations, and engage your own network of family and friends.
Wow, that sounds really cool, Christine. That app sounds really cool. Yeah, so I think COVID has raised a lot of challenges. I mean, one advantage we have is, you know, we've been dealing with this really since March for most of us. And I know we have over 120 partners across the country. community-based organizations that did have to pivot and find other ways to outreach to people. So we're going to ask that you continue to do that. And if you are out, some of our folks are going to be out, try your best to social distance, wear the mask, wear the gloves, have hand sanitizer. I'm not the CDC. Okay. You know some of those guidelines, but if you're high risk, you probably don't want to do that. If you are around people that are high risk, I can tell you, my wife, she works at a hospital. Anyone that works at a hospital that knows this, you come in, you have a place to put your clothes, you take a shower, you have to do all those type of things. So if you're out with us or with another organization and you are interacting with people, whether you have somebody that's high risk or not when you get home, I think it's a good idea to do that. You change your clothes and you take a shower and you try and distance as much as you can from the people that are high risk, or actually anybody else that's in your home. And hopefully everything works out okay. But it is a risk, and I think the best way you can avoid that is find other ways, if you can, to do things virtually or through using other technology.
Thanks, Jerry. Digny?
Thank you. I actually don't have a lot to add because a lot has been already said. But there are campaigns, and as a union at CIU, we are pushing for campaigns which include plans for online voting, requesting same-day voter registration, free postage by mail, right? And of course, access to safe, clean voting locations. But and even expanding early voting periods, right? These are extremely important. And what we've always talked about is all the voters in this country should automatically receive their ballots by mail. Right? That should be the benchmark to start with. And there are other ways, where we look at are the states doing any kind of paid media strategy in language, multiple language, right? Are we doing that? And as a union, we're trying to do that within our different membership. But as far as the safety, as a healthcare, we represent a lot of healthcare workers that there's never been a break for healthcare workers since COVID started. And but as far as safety for folks are concerned right now, mail ballots are the most important, and hence again, the postal service workers. It's so related. Please get your mail ballot. Early voting, these are the most important things. And if you do have to vote on that day, on the day of the election, please take extra precautions. And that's all we can say, but please, this is being put as a fear factor, and let this not be the reason that holds your votes on election day. Fear of this has been put in. All kinds of fear tactics are put in. COVID could have been reduced and significantly stopped, but then we know reasons on why it is what it is today. And they are all systematic ways to disenfranchise voters, especially voters of color and immigrants. So we should keep that in mind and look at our vote as a power to fight back.
Great, thank you all. We do also have a question about, is there any programs to raise awareness and advocacy on voting rights? Because our question asker was saying that that they think most of the Nepalese spoken communities don't know their voting rights and so on. So I do believe that there have been a bunch of links shared below, but if anybody wanted to speak more directly for the Nepalese population, I do invite you all.
Yeah, so for AAPI Vote, we're in the process of, currently we're creating a mailer that's also going to be mailed out to specific states and voters, probably approximately 700,000 households. A number of it is translated. So once we get those mailers done for each of the specific states, we will rework them into graphics that could be used in social media. So we hope to get that up onto our website as a resource for all of you to use in the next 2 weeks.
Also, Nepali मलाई भने हुन्छ है. Direct कुरा गर्छ हामी क्या. I just wanted to flex my Nepali a little bit here. Why not? But yeah, here in Minnesota, we are working with our partners, the Asian organizing AAOP, to provide grants to the Nepalese community. Similar work is being done in Pennsylvania. We have partners, and hopefully this expands where communities like the Nepalese community, the Tibetan communities, the Quran, there are a lot of communities that are still within our API community, have had proper reach out, so we can reach out to them and bring them into our own organizations and help train and guide them too. So, but with the Nepalese community, questions of any malai contact gare mujhe.
Great, thanks.
All right, so Aldef, I know we work with a group in Queens, I think in Woodside, Queens, Adhikar. We've worked with them for the last few elections, and we do translate some materials for that community. So actually, I don't know if everyone has our email addresses, but I'll put mine in the chat box. So the person that asked the question, you could certainly please email me. I'm happy to put you in touch with Adhikar too, because I would think they would want those resources as well.
Great, thanks. So I don't see additional questions on the topic we're talking about right now. So I'm going to take the moderator privilege to maybe ask a couple of things that occurred to me as you all were speaking. And I know we've talked a lot about online organizing and needing to make the shift because of COVID, and just recognizing the way we consume technology and how we interact has changed, of course, over the years. But what are you all doing to try to address the ongoing digital divide that continues to occur in our communities? I think certainly we've seen that the digital divide can also really impact maybe some of our elders, and particularly some who are LEP. So just curious, particularly in light of the complications of COVID, what you all have been trying to do to try to address that.
So even though I would say that a lot of our partners locally have been going online, they are also still trying to incorporate at the appropriate time, looking at the COVID rates about engaging directly. So for instance, there are individuals that maybe still, because we all know everyone's still going grocery shopping, right? And so but instead of approaching people to do voter registration directly, you may have a poster with a QR code, or you may have like a iPad or a tablet right there, and then that they could go ahead and complete it online, but then you wipe it down. So there's still the importance of engaging, especially for those that have a clientele, whether it's their health clinics or social service agencies. A number like it. In Michigan, API Vote Michigan was handing out food, doing food deliveries. So there's still opportunities where you could engage with those that are in need, especially those who are not as internet savvy. Especially, I think if those are dealing with food deliveries, they have the opportunity to continue to engage and making sure that they're ready to cast their vote.
Great. And then one other thought I had. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, some of the staff members at ALDEF, we've been dealing with, I know, like so many other organizations, multiple different issues. And one of the things was hate crimes in New York City. And I know there were some small demonstrations and marches, and at those events, our staff was able to hand out certain materials to people that may not have been able to access our materials online. There's still some opportunities. I think you just have to sort of pick your spots and see if there's an opportunity to have some face-to-face interaction while socially distancing and take all the precautions.
Great. And then I'm going to throw a question out there and then turn this over to you all for any closing comments you want to make. Jimmy, I know you had mentioned sort of some of the rhetoric that has been out there and some of the misinformation that has been circulating about voting. So I guess I will ask you both for your closing thoughts, and also, any wisdom or any advice you have to help people help other people understand how to distinguish misinformation and disinformation, and how to really be properly educated about their rights and what's going on with this election. So we will go backwards for who spoke first. So, Julianne, Christine, Jerry, and then Jigme. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So in response to the disinformation information, this is something that we've been talking about really through the entire Federation in trying to get prepared for both the election and for whatever comes next, right? Because we know this year the election's really not going to end on, the first Tuesday in November. We're going to have to keep our advocacy efforts going. And so we're doing some concentrated work on really talking with folks like Dr. Janelle Wong and others to really combat the disinformation out there and engaging in those conversations as a federation and with all of the different affiliates to really prepare our supporters and to combat sort of as a trusted messenger to the people who we have contact with and to provide good information out there. Just to close, I really want to just sort of restate the urgency and the need to invest in AAPI voters and particularly AAPI women voters this year. With the 2020 election, having our first candidate of South Asian descent on the presidential ballot, we need to invest and also ensure that we have disaggregated data about AAPI women voters available so that we can continue to learn about the fastest growing racial group and fastest growing immigrant population. And then just lastly, remembering that a wide variety of issues really drive AAPI voters, and reproductive health care is an issue supported by the majority of AAPI women. So we don't need to shy away from that as an issue. Healthcare is a human right. That's something that many of us really truly believe. And I just want to thank APACS for leading this important conversation. And thank you, Terry.
In regards to disinformation, I think what is being put out there, sometimes it's really hard to figure out what is reality and what is true and what is not, just because the way it's also even being framed. So APAVO, I know Advancing Justice, AJC, and a number of these organizations are working with Common Cause to really develop an infrastructure to make sure that we receive information from the ground in regards to what is disinformation, but we're also creating a network on the national level. So that way, if we see some trends or things that are happening in one state, we want to make sure that others know that to look out for this disinformation. So for us to be able to properly do that, we need you to plug into all of our organizations and our networks. The one thing I really want to plead with each and every one of you is that we cannot afford to do nothing, right? So I'm asking, we provided a lot of links for you. Pick and choose how you think you could get involved. Share this video with all your colleagues and friends and start the conversation. Say, I learned a lot of great things. Have you thought about being a poll worker? I'm thinking about doing the same thing. Or have you, I'm actually ready for the elections. Are you? Use this as a tool to start those conversations and to sign up and to actually get involved.
Yeah, I would say with the disinformation, we're trying to fight it with information, right? We're trying to put as much accurate information we can out there, and we have people like you that are on. This goes nowhere, or it goes very a short distance if you guys don't do anything with it, right? We need you to then go on and talk to your family, talk to your friends, and spread the word. Talk to them about, okay, what's our plan for election day? Okay, what are the rules around absentee ballots? Let's look at some of these resources so we know what we have to do. Is there early voting in our state? Are we going to do that? Are we going to go on election day? What's our poll site? Well, wait a second, are we registered yet? We have to do all those things now and educate ourselves now. Typically, it's right after Labor Day when everybody starts saying, oh yeah, there's an election. What am I doing, right? So I'm hoping everyone here will take the day off, as I mentioned. And you could work with multiple organizations or one for the whole day, or just be a poll worker for the whole day. Whatever it is, we need you to be involved. And like I'm sure most of you have thought, I really feel like we're on the precipice here. I've been saying it's the most important election of our lives for the last couple, but I mean, really, we can't afford to sit this out. The disinformation, I think, is a much larger problem that's infecting all aspects of our lives, a lot of it through social media. And we're just going to do the best we can with putting out accurate information and fighting back and making sure we're all educated, we're all informed, so that we can't be duped by that misinformation.
Great, thanks, Jerry. And Jingmi, you'll have the last word before I turn it back over to Madeline.
Fighting disinformation, I've realized that Facebook definitely is not the place to find proper information unless it's someone that you really trust or an organization that you believe in. And that being said, I mean, I cannot emphasize more on how this country's pillars and the legacy of voter suppression is rooted in discrimination based on race and class, targeting immigrants, indigenous, Black, Latinx, Asian Pacific Islanders. That is there. So when you ask information on voting rights, please make it that people that you trust. If you are a union member, ask your union or their organization. Amazing list of organization and representatives here on the panel. But most importantly, please find time to volunteer, attend workshops, trainings, right? So that you stay informed and you can move that information and your knowledge to others and repeat that cycle, because we have to get ourselves educated. Those people out there really do not want, they want us to come and vote on the wrong day at the wrong polling place. They will do everything to suppress, block, and disenfranchise us. So let's stay educated and let's share that knowledge with each other. And thank you, AAPI, and Terry, thank you very much. And all the panelists, very educational. I really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you all very, very much. I am happy to pass this back over to Madeline and hope you all enjoyed the very informative and lively session.
Thank you so much, Terry, for guiding us through such an important discussion. And thank you to all of our panelists as well. I also want to thank our panel sponsors, Planned Parenthood and SEIU, for supporting today's conversation on voting rights and challenges in the 2020 election. Up next in our legislative leadership series, we have two wonderful panels lined up for next week, starting on Tuesday, September 15th at 2 p.m. Eastern, with a conversation on AAPIs in the C-suite, followed by our panel on immigration and AAPI issue, where we'll hear from AAPI immigration policy experts on Thursday, September 17th, also at 2 p.m. And as you may know, we are doing APEX Gala Prom virtual this year, APEX celebration. So we invite you to also register to join us for that. That will air on October 1st. You can RSVP to participate in all of these exciting events by visiting the APEX website at www.apex.org. Thank you again for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day.